Far away from the city, surrounded by dense forests, stood the old mansion of the Bailey family. The house was a living piece of history. Every corner, every painting on the wall, and every chandelier whispered of past times. On this special evening, the house was filled with relatives gathered to celebrate the birthday of the family patriarch, Mr. Bailey, a strict and commanding man. But little did they know that this night would bring tragedy to the family. At the lavish dinner, 7 people sat down: Mr. Bailey, his wife, 2 children, and 3 grandchildren. Beneath their polite smiles were envy, old grudges, and desires to inherit something from the elderly man, who had become increasingly secretive. At one point, as the candles on the cake were blown out and toasts were made, suddenly the lights went out. A heavy, unsettling silence filled the room. When the lights came back on, Mr. Bailey was found dead. Shock swept through everyone, and they quickly realized the killer had to be one of them. Initially, suspicion fell on Mr. Bailey's wife. She was too emotional, and her agitation seemed suspicious. She immediately started screaming that it was an accident, but her behavior felt unconvincing. Everyone noticed how nervous she was. Grace quickly realized that if she weren't involved, her emotions would probably be more authentic. She would feel the pain of losing her husband. Still, her suspicions about her didn't fade until she began digging deeper into the investigation. An hour later, Detective James Grayson, a man in his 40s known for uncovering family secrets, arrived at the mansion. He quickly sensed that the killer was among the family members. Grayson started inspecting the room and noticed someone had tampered with the lights. He also observed Mr. Bailey's pocket watch had stopped, its hands frozen at a specific time. Grayson realized the killer had tried to stage it as an accident, but everything had been too carefully planned. Grayson, who was used to seeing the worst in people, sensed that dark secrets hid behind the faces of this family. Grayson began by questioning Mr. Bailey's wife. She seemed sincere, but some of her responses came too quickly, and she couldn't provide clear details of where she had been at the time of the murder. Grayson noticed several small inconsistencies in her story, but he decided not to jump to conclusions just yet. Suspicion also fell on Mr. Bailey's younger son, who had been on bad terms with his father due to financial issues. He didn't hide his frustration with his father's recent decisions, and it seemed like he had a motive to get rid of him. However, during the investigation, it turned out his alibi was solid, and his presence in the study didn't match the time of death. While searching Mr. Bailey's study, Grayson found the very book the grandson had mentioned. It was old, and hidden between the pages was a strange relic. The relic displayed complex symbols depicting a serpent devouring its own tail. Grayson realized that this amulet was worth far more than the entire Bailey estate. This wasn't just a family heirloom. It was a symbol of power, capable of bringing more than just wealth. Grayson began to suspect that the killer wasn't who everyone initially suspected. He carefully studied each family member's behavior and noted that the eldest daughter caught his attention. She was cold and often avoided eye contact. When Grayson started asking questions about the family secrets and the amulet, her nervousness gave her away. That's when Grayson realized who the true killer was. After revealing the killer, Grayson left the eldest daughter alone in the room. She sat with her head lowered, desperate and defeated. Grayson's expression was steady. He knew this woman, despite her outward calm, had been consumed by her own desires. Gathering the rest of the family, Grayson explained how carefully the murder had been planned and how the amulet had been the true cause of the tragedy. He explained that despite the apparent motive of inheritance, the eldest daughter had been obsessed with the idea of the power the amulet could bring. The family was shaken when they realized that their own flesh and blood was capable of such cruelty. After her arrest, the eldest daughter, Bailey, was handed over to justice. In prison, she often reflected on her actions, slowly realizing that she had lost more than she could ever gain. The amulet she had believed was her rightful inheritance had now become just a symbol of her loss. At her trial, her confession was cold and emotionless. She spoke of her desire to claim the amulet, which she had once seen her father possess, and how that desire had driven her to murder. She continued to insist that she had done it because she believed the amulet was her right. For her, the amulet wasn't just a valuable object. It was a symbol of what she lacked. But in the end, she realized she had lost everything: her freedom, her family, and perhaps even herself.